Hi, my name is Chris Catalfo. I'm a programmer with LibLime. I'm going to talk today about an open source web-based cataloging tool called Biblios. In this talk, I'll talk about what Biblios is and demonstrate some of the features I've put into it so far. I'll talk about the technologies I've used in developing it, and then talk about some future plans. So Biblios is a Web 2.0 or rich internet application for cataloging. I started developing it during last summer's Google Summer of Code, and I put together the basic infrastructure for it then. And since that summer, I've been working on it at LibLime. Right now, Biblios is in version 0.9 in beta. Excuse me, it is open source, and we hope to release the code in a month or so. Between now and then, if you'd like to get a hold of it, you can give me an email, and I'll have my email up at the end. We're ready for some user testing. I'd love to hear some feedback from you guys. Biblios is intended to be used as a standalone cataloging system, or to be used in conjunction with an integrated library system via a plugin. And right now we have one written for Koha. It's intended to be used by catalogers for copy original cataloging. It allows you to search multiple Z350 databases, catalog those bibliographic records that you find, save them to an SQLite database, and finally export them as Mark 21 or Mark XML files, or export them to your ILS via, again, this plugin. Let me next talk about the application layout for Biblios. On the user interface side of things, we have HTML, CSS, of course, but two JavaScript toolkits I've used extensively for this, principally ExtJS and jQuery. And I'll talk about these toolkits in a moment. And also Google Gears browser extension. For the searching part of things, Biblios is using the PASPAR2 program written by Index Data. And finally, there are a few CGI scripts on the server side of things for exporting and validating records. Okay, let me next go over here to show you what the user interface is looking like. We've tried to make this as intuitive as possible by making it look a bit like an email client program, so that on the left here there are a series of folders for search targets we're searching, and folders to save records into, and editors to edit records in. There's a main grid panel in the middle here for displaying records that are retrieved from searches, and a preview panel here at the bottom for displaying the mark XML of a particular record. Let me quickly, I'm going to search here, see if this hits the server here okay. Let's see, the connection's being a bit slow today. There we go. So as I run a search, you'll get a series of records in this middle pane here. And clicking on a record should hopefully retrieve that record and preview it down in this preview pane at the bottom. Let me flip back here for a moment. So let me talk a bit about the main JavaScript toolkit I'm using for this, for the user interface. This is the ExtJS toolkit. ExtJS, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it was originally written as an extension to the Yahoo user interface toolkit, and the last few months has become a standalone system. And let me talk about some of the features I'm using in Biblios for it. ExtJS offers customizable grids, which is what you saw in the middle of the screen there. It offers very nice trees. It offers nice panels to be open and closed. And I'll show you those in a minute, preview and help panels. It offers nice drag and drop features. And finally, it offers keyboard-driven commands. And let me flip back to the browser here for a second to show you. So again, this middle grid here area offers a toolbar at the top and rows of the grid to be able to arrow between, and functions to execute when you click on records. You can page between pages of the result set here. And this is being a bit slow, but you'll see it pop up there. The trees, ExtJS offers are very nice, so I have trees and subtrees within that tree containing data, for example, of the servers we're searching. Over here we have folders to save records into, and if I can right-click, we can add another subfolder there. ExtJS again also offers drag and drop facilities, so if I click a record here, we can drag that record over to this folder to save it to a local SQLite database for editing in a moment. And finally, ExtJS offers these panels to open and close. So for example, we can close that left-hand panel and close this panel to make more space for the grid and the search preview if you like. Okay, let me click back to this. Second nice thing about ExtJS is it's easy to extend. Excuse me. So for example, for Biblios, I've written a few custom components for loading data from the Google Gears database. ExtJS components are normally expecting data from JSON or XML from the server, and I've modified these to expect data from the SQLite database. And just to show you what that looks like, it's a very simple overloading of the load function to load data in the format ExtJS is expecting. So that's another nice feature that ExtJS provides. Okay. Let me next talk about the search middleware Biblios is using, which is, again, the Passepartout program. So Passepartout is a program written by Index Data, released several months ago. Thanks. It allows you to search multiple Z350 databases. And one of the great things about it is it returns records as it retrieves records from those databases. It also merges records on user defined fields and provides an easy way to offer search facets. Let me quickly demonstrate those things in Biblios. So again, if we run, let's see, if we run a different search here, hopefully that will come up here. There, so this grid in the middle here is being updated every so many milliseconds by Passepartout, by pinging Passepartout. And these search facets over here are being loaded dynamically as well from that data returned from Passepartout. So these facets are pretty easy to set up. And back to this. Passepartout is also very easy to configure via XML files. This is just a quick example of configuring the search types that Passepartout is using. So translating search types like TI for title into the attribute. Let me next talk a bit about the mark editor I've included with Biblios. The mark editor features syntax highlighting for subfields versus non-subfields. It features drop-down menus for fixed field editing, a series of shortcuts, keyboard shortcuts to use, for example, for adding, deleting fields or subfields, and also thoroughly controlled fields. If it's configured to do so, will search an SRU server for available headings. And let me show you what that looks like. If we take a record I have in my drafts folder over here and click on it, I can choose Edit to create the mark editor. At the top of the screen you can see this fixed field editor with drop-downs with valid Mark 21 codes. And these are codes I've pulled from the Mark 21 specification into an XML file for populating this, these selects here. Below here is the main mark editor here. And you can see I can hit enter to move between fields or shift enter to move up between them and tab between them. I have control R set up to delete a field, or let's see, control D delete a subfield, and so on for a few other commands. To generate this mark editor, I went through several iterations. During the summer of code, I experimented with several. What you see is what you get HTML editor types, for example, FCK editor and the Yahoo's HTML editor. I found them a bit difficult to use for the keyboard-driven commands I wanted to use. And so for a while, I used an XSL style sheet to generate a regular series of input fields for the editor. I've switched once again to generating it via JavaScript. I find it to be faster, and also got me around some problems I had with Internet Explorer's XSL style sheet processor. One more thing about the editor is that I've encapsulated the mark XML records, which it's able to edit at the moment, into a JavaScript object to manipulate those records. And the entire editor is also within a JavaScript object, so that you can, at some point in the future, write a different editor for it. For example, for editing METs or mods records, that should be fairly easy. It also provides macro support, and I accidentally have this slide in the wrong spot here. This is a quick example of creating an editor, loading a mark XML document into it in the second line, and then these last 4 lines are examples of the macros I've set up, adding fields or getting values of fields or seeing if it has a field, for example. So that's a bit what that looks like. In terms of integrating with with a remote integrated library system, set up a kind of a plugin architecture to use a RESTful API to send and retrieve data from that ILS. So far, I've written a plugin for Koha, and this is a snippet at the bottom here of what an AJAX call to authenticate to that remote ILS looks like, using jQuery in this case. And this is a quick example of what that looks like: posting user ID and password, getting a profile of editable and non-editable fields, or editable and editable fields, retrieving a remote record from that ILS, and saving a record to that ILS. And let's see if this will cooperate. We should be able to send a record to a Koha instance we have configured here. And if we're lucky, it came back. Yeah, so that these fields are now, this has now been checked by the Koha instance, and these fields at the bottom are Koha controlled fields, which I can't edit in the editor anymore. So that's one of the features we've put into that plugin. Okay. And just one last piece of technology is the Google Gears platform. I don't know if you've used this, but it offers several different APIs. The one which Biblios is using is the database API. And this allows Biblios to access an SQLite database located on the user's computer via this browser extension, Google Gears. And so Biblios is using this to save application data and bibliographic records to the SQLite database. Beyond the simple Gears database API, which is fairly primitive, Biblios also uses a simple object relational mapper called Gears ORM to make the database calls a little bit easier to use. And now at the end here, just a couple of future plans. Definitely want to add support for editing other XML record types, mets and mods. For example, editing serials records. Right now we can only edit monograph records, support for Unimark records, and then finally support for alternative saving and searching schemes, so that we could add other plugins to save it to their ILSs, or maybe even entirely different saving schemes, or other searching schemes perhaps even. And at the end here, I've just got a couple of resources. So at the moment, hopefully we'll get up soon a repository you can download code from. In the meantime, you can email me at this address for further information. I'd love to hear from you and see what you guys think about what we've got so far. And if you have any questions, be happy to answer. Thank you.